You're watching a grainy, black and white TV signal from 250,000 miles away. A figure in a bulky white suit descends a ladder. The footage is murky. The sound is garbled, but history is being made. Neil Armstrong is taking the first step onto the moon. It's the pinnacle of human achievement, but as the years pass, you watch it again. The shadows seem wrong. The flag ripples with no wind. The photos are too perfect. You start to wonder, was it a pinnacle of achievement or the most audacious piece of cinema ever created? Directed by a secretive genius in a Nevada desert studio. The idea that the Apollo moon landings were faked is the original down-the-rabbit-hole conspiracy. It began circulating almost immediately after the 1969 mission, a seed of doubt that would grow into a forest of suspicion.
Immediately. I always assumed this was a 90s internet thing. You're saying people were questioning it in real time.
Wow, so even before the internet, people were yelling fake at their TVs. Some things never change.
The theory was first properly popularized by Bill Kaysing, a former technical writer for a NASA contractor. In 1976, he self-published a book called We Never Went to the Moon, America's $30 billion Swindle.
And his core argument was that the government simply lacked the technology to do it safely. He wasn't pointing to visual evidence yet, just the technical capability.
Hold on, a technical writer? So the guy who wrote the instruction manuals decided the whole machine was fake? That's like the IKEA guy telling you the bookshelf is a hologram.
Exactly. And that seed of doubt is the gateway. Learning to spot conspiracies here. Questioning official narratives, seeking hidden clues, becomes a habit. It's the starting point from which all other modern conspiracies, from 9/11s to fake news, begin to seem possible.
It's a paradigm shift. Once you believe one massive official story is a lie, why would you trust any of them? It reframes your entire reality.
So the moon hoax is basically the freshman year of conspiracy college. It's Conspiracies 101. After this, you're ready for advanced classes in faked celebrity deaths and lizard people.
Right. And for the hoax believers, the Steelman case begins with that immense political pressure. In 1961, President Kennedy promised to land a man on the moon by the end of the decade. For them, this wasn't a goal. It was a deadline NASA was terrified of missing.
A public promise from the president on that scale. Failure wasn't an option. The national prestige on the line was enormous.
That's the ultimate promise you'll have it done by Friday from the big boss. I'd probably fake a moon landing too to avoid that Monday morning meeting.
And that's the why of the hoax theory, all rooted in the Cold War. A spectacular failure, astronauts lost in space, live on television, would have been a catastrophic propaganda victory for the Soviet Union.
So the logic is, the risk of a public catastrophic failure was considered higher than the risk of being caught in a massive deception.
It's a gamble. Would you rather be known as the guy who blew up the rocket or the guy who got caught faking the photos? I guess they chose alleged photo guy.
Which brings us to the how. For conspiracy theorists, that points directly to one man, director Stanley Kubrick. His 1968 film, 2001, A Space Odyssey, had created space visuals so realistic. They argued he was the only one who could have directed the Apollo 11 footage.
Hold on. You're saying they believe the government secretly hired the most famously obsessive and difficult director in Hollywood for a top-secret project. That seems optimistic.
But have you seen 2001? It looks more real than some actual space footage. It's not a huge leap to think the guy who made that movie could fake a trip to the moon.
And that theory is fueled by a specific kernel of truth. For his 1975 film Barry Lyndon, Kubrick acquired a set of ultra-fast 50mm FAT 0.7 lenses, which were originally developed by the Carl Zeiss company for NASA to photograph the dark side of the moon.
And there it is. The tangible link. A real verifiable connection between Kubrick and NASA technology. It doesn't prove a conspiracy, but it's enough to build a narrative around.
That's the key ingredient, right? You find one weird receipt in the glove compartment, and suddenly you've built a whole story about a secret second life. This lens is the receipt.
Ultimately, for Kaysing and the early believers, the case rested on the conviction that NASA's technology was simply not ready. They pointed to the immense unsolved challenges of radiation, navigation, and the lunar landing itself as proof that a successful mission was impossible with 1960s tech.
They saw the gap between the promise and the perceived capability, and decided a hoax was the only logical bridge between the two. The technical hurdles were just too high to have been cleared in time.
So it's less about a specific clue, and more about a general feeling that the whole thing was too good to be true. Like they pulled off a miracle, and some people just don't believe in miracles.
So, let's examine the specific evidence that fuels the hoax theory. First up, the waving flag. In photos and videos, the American flag planted by Armstrong and Aldrin appears to ripple. Theorists point out there is no wind on the moon.
And the argument is straightforward: no atmosphere, no wind. A flag can't wave. They call it an obvious studio blunder, a fan left on by mistake.
Classic intern mistake. You're trying to fake the biggest event in human history and Dave, from props forgot to turn off the air conditioning. Happens.
Then, the missing stars. The lunar sky in every single Apollo photograph is completely black. There is not one star visible.
Which is deeply counterintuitive. On an atmosphere-free world, the stars should be breathtakingly brilliant. The skeptical argument is that faking a realistic star field was too complex, so they just left the backdrop black.
My nephew's bedroom ceiling has a more convincing galaxy. They didn't even spring for the little glow-in-the-dark ones. Budget cuts on the biggest production of all time.
The shadows are a major point of contention. Theorists highlight photos where shadows cast by astronauts and equipment don't run parallel to each other.
Which implies multiple light sources. If the sun is the only light, all shadows should be parallel. Multiple angles suggest studio lighting like on a film set.
That's just basic stagecraft. You gotta light the talent properly. Can't have Buzz Aldrin's face half in shadow when Hez delivering his big line.
There is also the infamous C rock in one official NASA photograph. A rock in the foreground appears to have a perfectly formed letter C on it. Believers claim this is a prop rock, mistakenly turned so its label was visible to the camera.
So the claim is that a set dresser placed prop C on the set, and nobody noticed it was facing the wrong way during the shoot.
Your prop master is getting fired. Rule 1 of fake moon landings: turn the label away from the camera. That's just sloppy.
And a big one. How did the astronauts survive the Van Allen radiation belts? These are zones of intense radiation surrounding Earth that should have been lethal to pass through.
The argument being that the shielding technology in 1969 wasn't nearly advanced enough to protect human life from that level of concentrated radiation exposure.
So the theory is they didn't even try. They just did a few laps around the Earth in the safe zone and called it a day. Like telling your parents you're going to the library, but you just go to the mall next door.
Then there is the question of the blast crater. The lunar module's engine generated over 10,000 pounds of thrust. It should have carved a massive crater into the lunar surface upon landing. Yet, in the photos, the lander sits on nearly undisturbed soil.
How is that possible? You can't direct that much force onto a dusty surface and not see a significant displacement. It defies basic physics.
They must have had the world's most gentle landing, like a butterfly with a rocket engine.
And speaking of dust, the footprints are famously too perfect. The iconic image of Buzz Aldrin's boot print is incredibly sharp and clear. Skeptics argue this requires moisture to hold the shape, something completely absent on the moon.
The argument is that dry, fine dust in a vacuum wouldn't clump together like that. It would just be a formless depression. They claim it looks exactly like a footprint made in wet sand.
Which conveniently is what you use when you're building a sandcastle or a fake moon set. I'm just saying, the catering on that set must have been amazing.
Finally, there is the sheer scale of it all. Keeping a secret of this magnitude would require the lifelong silence of over 400,000 NASA employees, contractors, and scientists involved in the Apollo program.
Statistically, that's the biggest hurdle for any grand conspiracy theory. The probability of a leak approaches 100% as the number of people involved grows. 400,000 people for over 50 years. It's mathematically indefensible.
The HR department for that conspiracy would be the most powerful organization on Earth. Imagine the NDAs. You sneeze wrong and a guy in a black suit shows up to debrief you.
Okay, let's unpack these, starting with the waving flag we talked about earlier. The answer is simple engineering. The flag had a horizontal rod sewn into the top seam to make it extend outward in the vacuum of space.
Exactly. It wasn't waving. It was wrinkled from being packed away for the journey, and those wrinkles stayed perfectly preserved because there is no wind or atmosphere to smooth them out.
So it's not waving, it's just permanently wrinkly. I get it. My dress shirts look like that after 5 minutes. I don't blame the government, I blame cotton.
And the missing stars, that's not a conspiracy. It's just photography 101. The lunar surface, bathed in direct sunlight, was incredibly bright. So were the astronauts' white suits.
The camera's aperture and shutter speed had to be set for those brilliant objects. That automatically made the much dimmer stars in the background completely invisible. It's the same reason you can't see stars from Earth during a sunny day.
It's like trying to take a picture of a firefly standing next to a nuclear explosion. You might want to adjust your settings, and you're probably not going to see the firefly.
The non-parallel shadows are just as easily explained. It's a trick of perspective caused by using wide-angle lenses on a vast uneven landscape. On a non-flat surface, parallel lines look like they converge or diverge.
It's an optical illusion. The brain expects to see shadows behave as they do on flat ground. But the lunar surface is a mess of craters, slopes, and hills. The ground itself is warping the shadows.
So it's not a conspiracy. It's just bad photography composition. They needed to find a flatter spot for their photo shoot. It's all about location, people.
And the sea rock. Researchers went back to the original NASA film reels. It's not there. The consensus is that it was a printing error, a tiny hair or a fiber that got caught on the film during the duplication process for press photos.
It's a classic analog artifact. In a world before digital, every copy introduced the possibility of new flaws. The sea exists on some prints, but not on the master negative.
So the ultimate proof of a government conspiracy is a stray eyelash from some guy in a darkroom in 1969. That's not a smoking gun, that's just bad hygiene.
But the single most powerful counter-argument has to be the rocks. The Apollo astronauts brought back 382 kilograms of lunar rock.
And those rocks have been independently studied by thousands of scientists in labs all over the world. They are definitively extraterrestrial. They have unique isotopic compositions, tiny glass beads from micrometeorite impacts, and a complete lack of weathering by water, features impossible to fake on Earth.
You can fake a photo. You can't fake 800 pounds of rocks that have been sitting in a vacuum, getting blasted with space radiation for 1 billion years. That's a lot of paperwork to forge.
And then there is the competition. The Soviet Union was tracking every second of the Apollo missions with their own technology. They had every political and propaganda incentive to expose a fake.
And they never did. In fact, Soviet state media at the time acknowledged the American success. Their silence is one of the loudest pieces of evidence we have. They would have loved nothing more than to call out a hoax.
That's the ultimate peer review, when your mortal enemy, who's been trying to beat you for a decade, says, "Yeah, they did it. They probably did it."
So if the evidence for the landing is so overwhelming, why do the theories persist? The psychological appeal is powerful. Once you learn the habit of conspiracy spotting, history itself can start to feel like a fraud.
It reframes your relationship with information. You're no longer just a passive consumer of facts. You become an active detective, uncovering a hidden reality that no one else can see. That's an intoxicating feeling.
It's the ultimate, I know something you don't know. It makes you feel smart. It makes you feel important. You're not just some guy, you're one of the few who's seen through the matrix.
And that's the real legacy of the moon hoax. It's the rootkit for modern skepticism. The research shows how the same pattern of doubt metastasized, influencing theories about 9/11's, JFK, and more recently, election integrity and even COVID-19 misinformation.
It's a transferable skill set of suspicion. Once you've trained yourself to see hidden clues in NASA photos, you start looking for them in building collapses and vaccine data.
It's the pilot episode for the conspiracy cinematic universe. It sets up all the characters and the main conflict, which is, don't trust anyone wearing a tie.
And that creates an everything is connected worldview. It's not dozens of separate, complex failings of institutions. It's one simple, overarching narrative of a single powerful they, who are pulling all the strings.
It's a comforting thought, in a way. The idea of a secret group being in control is less terrifying than the idea that nobody is in control, and the world is fundamentally chaotic.
It's the difference between a horror movie with a monster you can fight and a documentary about how cosmic radiation could randomly turn your bones to jelly at any second. I'll take the monster. Thanks.
Ultimately, the theory persists because it reflects a profound and growing distrust of institutions. It was born in an era of government lies about Vietnam and Watergate, and it thrives in our current climate.
The conspiracy isn't the cause of the distrust. It's a symptom. It's a story that makes sense to people who have been given every reason to believe that official sources are not telling them the whole truth.
And if sorting through what's a lie, what's a mistake, and what's just plain weird is your thing, you're in the right place. We're here every week, so subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss the next rabbit hole.
In the end, the moon landing conspiracy isn't really about space. It's about our relationship with truth, authority, and each other. The final question isn't, did we go to the moon?
But rather, can we as a society still agree on what's real anymore? And the answer to that is getting less clear every year.
On that deeply unsettling note, thanks for watching.
Next week, we're taking a look at a theory that makes the moon landing seem downright normal. We're asking, are the world's leaders secretly shape-shifting, blood-drinking lizards from another dimension? Join us as we investigate the reptilian elite.
See you then.
Try not to get abducted.